I signed the adoption papers with trembling hands, and before the ink had even dried, my father looked me in the eyes and said, "From this moment on, you are no longer my daughter." I thought losing my family would be the hardest part of my life. I had no idea that 6 months later, the identity of my son's biological father would destroy everything my father believed about our family. My name is Hannah. I'm 34 years old, and I never imagined that adopting a little boy who couldn't speak would uncover a family secret buried for more than a decade. I had always wanted children. After years of infertility treatments and a painful divorce from my ex-husband, I accepted that motherhood wasn't going to happen the way I'd dreamed. Instead of giving up, I began volunteering at a children's shelter. That's where I met Noah. He was 6 years old with soft brown eyes that carried more sadness than any child should ever know. He never spoke. Not a single word. The staff explained that Noah had developed selective mutism after years of severe emotional trauma and neglect. His biological mother had died from an overdose, and nobody knew who his father was. The records listed him as unknown. While other children ran around the playground, Noah sat quietly drawing tiny houses with smoke coming from the chimneys. One afternoon, I sat beside him. "That's beautiful," I whispered. He looked at me, then slowly slid the drawing into my hands. At the bottom, he'd written one word. "Home." I cried all the way back to my apartment. 3 months later, Noah officially became my son. I had never felt happier. My father, Richard, felt the exact opposite. Our family had money. My grandfather had built a successful construction company that had been passed down for generations. Dad cared about bloodlines more than love. When I invited everyone over to introduce Noah, my father barely looked at him. He stared at the adoption certificate lying on the table. "You actually did it." "I did." He shook his head. "You've embarrassed this family." My younger brother, Adam, tried to calm him. "Dad, he's just a little boy. He isn't one of us." Noah flinched at the raised voices. He quietly hid behind my leg. That only made Dad angrier. "You threw away your inheritance for someone else's child." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "He's my son." "No," Dad snapped. "He's a stranger." I reached for Noah's hand. "We're leaving." Dad's voice followed me to the door. "If you walk out with that boy, don't ever come back." I turned around one last time. I'd rather lose my inheritance than abandon my child. The door slammed behind me. Just like that, I lost my father. The months that followed weren't easy. Dad officially removed me from the family trust. Relatives stopped calling. Family holidays came and went without invitations. Some cousins even unfriended me online after hearing Dad's version of the story. But every evening Noah would quietly place another drawing on my kitchen table. Sometimes it was just the two of us holding hands. Sometimes it was a tiny house. Eventually, he drew himself smiling. Those pictures became worth more than any inheritance. Then strange things started happening. One afternoon, an older man sat outside Noah's elementary school watching him from inside a parked car. The principal called me immediately. By the time I arrived, the man was gone. A week later, flowers appeared outside my front door. No card. Just white lilies. Then I noticed someone had been leaving expensive children's books anonymously at Noah's school. The librarian assumed they were from me. They weren't. I started getting nervous. Was someone watching my son? I hired a private investigator. His name was Daniel. After 2 weeks, he called. I found something. We met at his office. He slid an old newspaper across the desk. It showed a photograph from nearly 7 years earlier. A charity gala. Standing beside Noah's biological mother was a wealthy businessman named Victor Hale. My stomach tightened. Victor Hale wasn't just rich. He'd been my father's closest friend for over 30 years. Daniel leaned forward. It gets stranger. He placed a DNA report on the table. Victor had secretly submitted a DNA sample after seeing Noah at school. The result showed a 99.99% probability. Victor Hale was Noah's biological father. I couldn't speak. But why would he hide it? Danielle sighed. Because someone paid Noah's mother to disappear before the child was born. My heart pounded. Who? Danielle looked uncomfortable. I couldn't prove it. Then he handed me one final document. A bank transfer. The sender's name nearly made me faint. Richard Collins. My father. I stared at the paper until the letters blurred. No. Daniel nodded slowly. The money was transferred 6 years ago. I drove straight home shaking. Why would my father secretly pay Noah's mother? None of it made sense. That evening, someone knocked on my door. It was Victor. He looked exhausted. I know you know. I stepped aside silently. He sat in my living room staring at Noah's drawings hanging on the wall. I loved his mother. His voice cracked. We were planning to tell everyone. What happened? He closed his eyes. Your father found out. I froze. He told me she'd only been using me for money. Victor swallowed hard. Then she disappeared. I searched for years. He wiped away tears. I never stopped looking. He reached into his jacket and pulled out dozens of unopened letters. They were all returned. Every envelope had been addressed to Noah's mother. None had ever reached her. Someone had intercepted them. Victor whispered, I only discovered Noah existed 2 months ago. I couldn't breathe. My father hadn't just abandoned me. He had stolen 6 years from a father and his son. I didn't know whether to scream or cry. Victor looked toward Noah's bedroom. May I meet him? I hesitated. Then nodded. Noah quietly walked into the room. Victor knelt in front of him. Neither of them spoke. Victor simply smiled through tears. Noah studied his face. Then slowly reached out and touched Victor's hand. Victor completely broke down. I've dreamed about this moment every day. Noah didn't say anything. He simply hugged him. It was the first time I'd ever seen Noah hug someone besides me. I knew the truth had somehow reached him without words. But I wasn't finished. Dad had taken too much from too many people. Victor wanted to sue immediately. I had a different idea. My father was hosting his 70th birthday party in 2 weeks. Nearly every important person in town would be there. Including our entire family. Including Victor. I accepted the invitation for the first time in months. Dad looked surprised when I walked into the ballroom holding Noah's hand. You've got some nerve. I smiled. I'm just here to celebrate. He scoffed. I hope you've finally realized your mistake. No. I looked directly at him. I came to return something. Everyone turned toward us. Dad frowned. What? The lies. The room fell silent. Victor stepped forward. Richard's face immediately lost its color. You. Victor said quietly, you told me she betrayed me. Dad remained silent. You paid her to disappear. Gasps echoed around the room. Dad laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. I handed Victor the bank documents. Then I connected my phone to the ballroom projector. The investigator had recovered old voicemail recordings. Dad's voice filled the room. If you leave town now, you'll never hear from Victor again. Take the money. The silence afterward felt endless. My uncle whispered, Richard. Dad looked around desperately. It's not what it sounds like. Victor exploded. You stole my son. Dad finally snapped. I did what had to be done. Everyone froze. He pointed at Victor. You would have embarrassed all of us. You were married. Victor nodded slowly. I was separated. Dad shouted louder. Our business would have collapsed. So you destroyed innocent lives instead? Dad couldn't answer. At that exact moment, something unbelievable happened. Noah slowly stepped away from me. He walked toward Victor. Toward the man he'd only met once. Everyone watched in complete silence. Noah looked directly at him. Then, after 6 years without speaking, he whispered one tiny word. Dad. The room erupted into tears. Victor fell to his knees sobbing. I love you. Noah wrapped his arms around him. I love you. Every person in the ballroom cried. Even my brother Adam wiped his eyes. Dad stood completely alone. Nobody looked at him anymore. Weeks later, Victor filed multiple lawsuits over fraud, coercion, and years of deception. My father's reputation collapsed almost overnight. Board members forced him into early retirement. Several relatives who had blindly followed him apologized to me. Some admitted they'd always feared standing up to him. The biggest surprise came from Grandpa's original will. A forgotten legal clause stated that any heir proven guilty of intentionally harming another beneficiary through fraud would lose all inheritance rights. Dad had unknowingly disqualified himself. Everything he had tried to protect slipped through his own fingers. As for me, I didn't suddenly become rich. I became something far more valuable. I became part of a family built on truth instead of control. Victor never tried to replace me. He thanked me instead. You gave my son a life when I didn't even know he existed. I smiled. No. I looked at Noah, who was laughing in the backyard for the very first time. We both saved each other. Months later, Noah spoke more and more each week. Therapists called it remarkable. I called it love. One evening, he climbed onto my lap while Victor grilled hamburgers outside. He smiled at me and asked, clear as day, Mom, are we home now? I kissed his forehead. Yes, sweetheart. For the first time in all our lives. We finally were.